Hello lovely viewers, and welcome back to the Bold and the Beautiful News official YouTube channel. With a stiff jaw and a protective arm over his little son's shoulders, Wyatt Spencer got from the private flight. His kid was no more than 9 years old, quiet but perceptive, carrying a rucksack and looking around the runway with wide eyes. The child's sandy brown waves and inquisitive eyes reminded the pilot of Liam at that age, and the pilot had to pause and reconsider. Wyatt hadn't slept for 16 hours since Bill Spencer's phone call. Any sense of normalcy he had found in his post-Forrester existence in San Diego was destroyed by a call. Liam is here. Over the phone, Bill's voice had sounded unusually raw. He's unconscious. Wyatt, it's horrible. I'm not sure if he'll make it. It just required that. Wyatt had abandoned everything. Meetings, appointments, and even his customary prudence in the face of his father's hyperbole. However, this had nothing to do with business or controversy. This was Liam's blood, his brother. And he had been drawn back to a city he had purposefully left behind by the weight of that allegiance. Not by himself this time, but with his son, whom he had mostly shielded from the spotlight and the turmoil that had characterized so much of the Spencer family's history. Bill's automobile was waiting already, and with a fake grin, Wyatt pushed his kid into the back seat. He quietly remarked, "We're going to see Uncle Liam," as he looked at the driver in the rearview mirror. With a somber nod, the boy's fingers gripped his backpacks strapped tightly. "He's sleeping right now, but he's going to be happy to know you're here." "Is he injured?" "Yes," Wyatt said in a captivating voice. "He is powerful, however. More powerful than anybody I've met." The only sounds throughout the remainder of the journey were the rumble of LA traffic and the odd sniffle. Wyatt saw familiar faces walking close to the glass doors as the vehicle arrived at the hospital entrance. Standing there in a fine black suit, Bill lacked his customary swagger and had his face drawn. Standing next to him, Steffi Forrester seemed weary and worn out. She leaned towards Finn, who muttered something in her ear, her arms folded securely over her breast. As Douglas attempted to amuse her with a coloring book, Hope Logan sat off to the side, her eyes swollen, and she held Beth on her lap. Instead of looking like a hospital waiting room, it resembled a family mourning vigil. Bill's lips quivered as he turned to face his son, not just because he saw Wyatt, but also because his grandchild had appeared out of the blue. Bill took a breath and moved forward. "Wyatt, you arrived." Wyatt gave a brief nod. "I did, of course. Liam is in a coma," he said. What other way was I to react? There was a harshness in his voice that Bill was all too familiar with. Then Wyatt turned and touched the boy's back tenderly. "This is Zachary, Dad." The child's tentative yet inquisitive face peered out from behind Wyatt. Bill's jaw dropped a little. "Zachary, my son," Wyatt stated plainly. "Liam's nephew." Steffi blinked and took a cautious, shocked step forward. "You didn't mention having a son." No nice moment ever existed. With his gaze fixed on the distant window of Liam's hospital, Wyatt answered. "And until absolutely necessary, I didn't want him near this mess. However, if he awakens, Liam deserves to see his uncle, and he deserves to know who he is." No one spoke for a time as the last section struck like a blow to the chest. Bill's gruff veneer melted as he knelt before Zachary. "I'm your granddad, child." Zachary's head cocked. "You don't seem to be a grandfather." Wyatt laughed briefly and dryly. He often receives that. As a nurse led them inside, the humor was short-lived. With each step they walked towards the intensive care unit, the stress grew. Liam found himself in a secluded room full with equipment that flashed and beeped mercilessly. The sole indication of life is their sterile noises. Wyatt paused at the entrance. He hadn't seen his brother this way in years. Pale against the white blankets, completely defenseless and exposed. After the aircraft accident fright and the Thomas incident, he hadn't even seen Liam, that broken. This was not like the others. This was death's precipice. "Is he having a dream?" Zachary tugged at Wyatt's sleeve and inquired. Wyatt took a deep breath. Perhaps. Perhaps he's thinking of climbing a mountain, or being on a beach. Or, Zachary said, rescuing someone. Much like superheroes. Wyatt blinked back the pain in his eyes and said in a whisper. Just like that. Wyatt escorted his kid to the side of the bed as they entered. Zachary looked cautiously, yet curiously over the balcony. He said, "He's really still." While kneeling beside his kid, Wyatt said, "Uncle Liam's never still. You were a baby when you first met him. Remember how he kept you in the hospital?" "You won't, but I do." He sobbed. "Referred to you as Little Spence, said that one day he would show you how to ride a bike. Can I still learn from him?" Zachary asked naively. Wyatt's heart crushed. I hope so, buddy. I do. More family members entered, and left as the minutes went by. Ridge and Brooke passed by with their arms wrapped around one another, clearly scared. As Katie sat next to Liam and whispered memories into his ear, she suppressed her emotions. Silently and stealthily, R.J. placed a Forrester bracelet next to the bed. Liam's initials were inscribed on one that he and Luna had created. Each visitor left behind a prayer, a plea, or a token. However, the focal point of the room seemed to be Zachary, who was standing on his tiptoes next to the bed. A youngster who was innocent and unaffected by the adult deceptions, treacheries, and secrets that had shaped the story of the brave and the lovely for many years. Gently he extended his hand and laid his little hand on Liam's bigger, dead hand. Softly, Uncle Liam, he murmured. The whole room paused as Finn glanced up from the chart he was reading. It's okay if you're tired, but you have to come back. You promised to teach me stuff. Patients may sometimes hear us, even when they are in a coma. Wyatt stepped forward, his voice trembling now, saying, Hey man, it's me. Your screw-up of a brother who spent years competing with you, fighting over the same women, always trying to prove something, but right now I'd give anything to argue with you again. He said, Keep talking to him. He reached for Liam's hand and squeezed it, and for a moment there was a flicker, just the smallest twitch of Liam's fingers. Did you see that? Wyatt whispered. I think so. To hear you call me out for wearing too much product in my hair, or say I'm being dramatic. I just need you, man. We all do. Liam, please. You can't go like this. There's so much left. Beth Kelly, they need you. I need you. You don't get to leave without hearing me say, I'm sorry for everything. I believe he felt it. Hope sprung to her feet. Try again. Talk to him. Steffi moved closer now, wiping tears from her cheeks. I know I wasn't the best father. Hell, I probably messed you up more than I helped, but I'll be damned if I bury my boy. She covered her lips as her voice cracked, and Bill interrupted. You hear me, Liam? I will not lose you. He leaned over and brushed Zachary's hair. You now have an intelligent nephew. He already aspires to emulate you. No, Zachary abruptly responded. He gestured at Wyatt and continued, like my dad and my new uncle. Wyatt's eyes began to well up with unguarded, honest tears. I want to be like both my dads. Everyone looked at him. Liam, hurry up. Return so you may meet your nephew in person. Return and fulfill your commitments. I can't do this without you, so please come back. The heart monitor's steady beep was the sole sound to break the silence once again. Then another twitch, more forceful. Finn hurried on. We have an answer. It's there but reflexive. He's paying attention. And hope returned at that same moment, not as a dream, but as something tangible and perceptible. It was not the end of the battle for Liam's life. However, his whole family is by his side at last. It had really started. It seemed as if time had stopped for everyone in a room as Liam's fingers twitched once more under Wyatt's hold. It was just a little movement, hardly noticeable, but it was enormous to those who loved him. Leaning forward, Finn stood close to the monitors, his trained eyes focused on the neurological measurements that flashed over the screen. Subtle improvements in responsiveness suggested something remarkable, but the EKG rhythm was constant. One step ahead. He remarked carefully, it's not just a reflex anymore. He's reacting with intention. His mind is beginning to react. With a tempest of optimism in his voice, Wyatt gazed at his unconscious brother and gave Liam's hand another, more purposeful squeeze. Man, hurry up. We've experienced too much for this to be the conclusion. Everyone is waiting for you. Steffi, Beth, Kelly, and now Zach, I hope. Zachary stood next to the bed and gazed up at his father, his eyes wide. Did he not hear me? Wyatt knelt next to his kid and drew him in. I believe he did, friend. I believe you roused him. Unable to withstand the allure of Liam any longer, Steffi took a step forward. Her expression remained harsh, her cheeks still streaked with tears. I need you to return, Liam. Not just for the girls, but also for myself and the family. I can't take back some of the things I said before this. I was unable to properly say farewell. However, I now want to express all that I was never able to. She extended her arm and touched Liam's heart, feeling its steady beat. You can't get away with it. Can you hear me? Not when we had just discovered tranquilly. Behind her, Hope stood with an inscrutable expression, trapped in that weird liminal area between skepticism, hatred, and love. She was aware that Steffi and Liam had a closer relationship than she liked to acknowledge. However, she was also aware that Liam had almost picked her once again. Before all of this, just before the shooting, Hope said to herself, more than to anybody else, he's still mine too. I still have faith in us because we are a family. Meanwhile, Bill had retreated into the corner, his face becoming sterner. He had always been weak at caring too much, not because he didn't care. His kid was on the verge of death, and he couldn't see him display the type of emotion that might break him. Wyatt, however, saw through it. Dad, you're not playing tricks on anybody. Wyatt said quietly. Remember how you phoned me crying? Bill gave him a scowl. I felt sentimental. I wasn't crying, however. You referred to him as your heart. Wyatt grinned as he added. Said that you couldn't live without him. You're embellishing, said Bill with a groan. No, Wyatt answered, grinning in spite of the situation. I've only now noticed the guy with the bulletproof vest. And you know what? That man is far more appealing to me. Zachary took something out of his rucksack at that same moment. It was a sheet of folded paper that had been handled too much and was wrinkled at the edges. Then he held it up and said, Can I give this to Uncle Liam? It was a whimsical, vibrant, and emotionally charged drawing. The image included two stick figures, one taller and standing in front of a blackboard, and the other with wild hair and a skateboard, which was obviously Wyatt. At the top, it said, My Uncle Liam, the smartest hero ever. The gesture's innocence destroyed any remaining poise in the room. Of course, answered Steffi quietly. Zachary gently slid the photo to the side of the bed and laid it on Liam's chest, saying, He'll want to see that when he wakes up. Dad told me tales about you, so I created it. He spoke about how you always acted morally, even in difficult situations, and how you helped save lives. He rubbed one eye and sniffed. I reasoned that this could assist you recall who you are if you've forgotten. At this point, everyone in the room was sobbing. Ridge, who didn't attempt to conceal a tear, even wiped it away. That young man is a true Spencer. He whispered, Heartier than some of the mature guys I know. Wyatt touched the shoulder of his kid. You did well, child. Your uncle will adore it. This time, the monitor beat more sharply. Finn's head jerked upwards. Another surge is here. There is an increase in brain wave activity. He is responding to outside stimuli. As Liam's eyes flickered, everyone froze. It was sufficient, but just once. Finn held out a hand. Avoid crowding him. Make room for him. However, nobody made a move. Liam's brow wrinkled and his lips twitched. Then his eyes opened painfully and slowly. Liam, Hope said as she moved forward. Wyatt said, Liam, it's me, with urgency. Blinking, Liam tried to concentrate. You're safe. You're in the hospital. We're all here. He hardly raised his voice beyond a whisper. Wyatt. Wyatt said, laughing despite his tears. Liam tilted his head slightly and said, Yeah, bro. It's me. I'm looking for Dad. Bill nodded and moved onwards. Son, right here. Then at last, Liam's eyes settled on the one unfamiliar face. Zachary. The little kid stood silently, holding on to his rucksack, and gazed in wonder at his uncle, who had just woken up. Who's? Liam's voice faltered. Wyatt knelt next to the bed. Zachary is this person. He is your nephew and my son. Liam's eyes expanded, filled with emotion. Do you have a son? I do, Wyatt replied. Do you not have another cause to fight now? As the reality of it all set in, Liam blinked once more and a tear ran down his face. The anguish, the bewilderment, the love, the overwhelming scope of life that had transpired when he was on the verge of death. Wyatt nodded as Liam glanced at his father and said, Come here. Slowly, Zachary moved closer and grasped Liam's hand. A gentle grin tugged at Liam's lips as he closed his eyes and felt that little hand around his own. He said, Hey there, buddy, in a whisper. I'm happy to meet you, Uncle Liam. The gathering fell into a respectful silence for the following several minutes. Nobody had to say anything. Outside the room, in the corridor just beyond the nurse's station, a person was pacing, leading them to believe that Liam was alive. He was awake. The worst was over. Thomas Forrester, holding a letter in his palm, his eyes black, his mouth tense. Luna, a letter from an unexpected source. Since her stunning return at her own burial a few days before, she had not been seen. And that morning, this message had been sent to Forrester Creations. It was brief, but it was warning. They're not done yet. Liam was just the first one. Advise Wyatt to keep Zachary away from the Spencers and urge Steffi to safeguard her kids. As Luna Thomas read it again, his breath caught. What was meant by Luna? Who wasn't done? Zachary, why? What was it that Wyatt's kid had been involved in? Liam was beginning to wane once again within, worn out from the strain of awakening. After Finn informed everyone that he needed to relax, they gradually filed out one by one. Wyatt, however, stayed a little longer, running his fingers over the artwork made with a crayon on Liam's breast. Please remain with us. I can't do this without you because this child deserves an uncle like you. He turned to go after giving his brother a gentle forehead kiss. However, Thomas grabbed his arm outside the door. I need to speak to you alone. Wyatt scowled. What is it? Thomas handed him the letter. Wyatt's face lost its hue. This was written by Luna. Thomas grudgingly nodded. She had some knowledge about Zachary. Regarding you. Slower this time, Wyatt read the message again. Every phrase sunk more deeply. Zachary should not be around the Spencers. How on earth can it signify anything? Wyatt whispered. Thomas spoke softly. I'm not sure, but it seems like your kid is at the heart of something hazardous. Thomas stood next to Wyatt, his arms crossed over his chest, as Wyatt gazed at the letter, his heart pounding. It was now quiet in the corridor outside Liam's hospital room, but it had a certain weight, like the stillness before a storm. Every phrase of Luna's remarks pierced Wyatt's thoughts more deeply than the one before. Zachary should not be around the Spencers. Then he looked up sharply. Why would she say that? How is Zachary related to anything? Thomas had a somber face. I'm not sure. However, I don't think we can afford to dismiss it if Luna experienced all we believe she did, being confined in a medical institution, being experimented on, and waking up only to leave that type of message. Gazing through the glass pane of the hospital door at Zachary, who is now peacefully sketching another image on a chair by Liam's bed, Wyatt attempted to regulate his breathing. He seems so naive, oblivious to the chaos that is now engulfing him. Whispering, he's just a kid, Wyatt said. An intelligent, kind, and completely typical little guy. Thomas squinted his eyes. Wyatt scowled at him and said, Are you sure? Without flinching, Thomas said, What's that supposed to mean? Simply that we are unaware of what Luna discovered. It could have been more about Zach's background than his identity. The suggestion surprised Wyatt, and he blinked. He is my son. Who is it with? Thomas inquired in a stern but non-accusatory tone. You have never identified his mother to any of us. You didn't bring her up. Not once. Wyatt clenched its jaw. Because nobody cares about it. But now, Thomas remarked, it may be. Yes, if the person who abducted Luna is still alive, that is our concern. Wyatt retreated a little, feeling abruptly trapped, if Liam was meant as a warning, and if your kid is involved in what Luna discovered. Luna's warning was running through his mind. The enigma of Project Helix and Liam's coma. He never imagined having to respond to this question regarding his own kid. I wasn't concealing anything, therefore, I didn't keep his mother a secret. At last, Wyatt spoke in a hushed tone. I did what she instructed me to do. I admired her desire to keep Zachary out of the limelight and away from the bustle of Los Angeles. Thomas continued to keep a close eye on him. Who is she? Wyatt was silent for a while. He then moved closer to Thomas and added, her name was Emily Cross, as if he were finally making a choice he had been putting off for a long time. Thomas scowled. Cross? It sounds familiar. It should, said Wyatt. When Luna brought up Project Helix, Finn was referring to a biotech business in San Francisco where she had previously worked in research. At one time, the company was said to have connections to experimental genetic cures. Thomas's gaze widened. Do you think a relationship exists? Wyatt gave a slow nod. At that moment, I didn't. The majority of what she was working on was unknown to me. She was quiet, intelligent, and reticent. Then she became pregnant. Informed me that staying in the city was no longer safe. Said that individuals were observing her. That she didn't agree with the company's attempts to utilize her findings. How did she end up?